All right, so we've got RKDA halted. The halt time was 10:32 and 43 seconds. Resumption should be 10:37 and 43 seconds, exactly 5 minutes later. Halted on a circuit breaker for moving more than 10% within a 5-minute rolling period. So these 4 candles were enough for a 10% move and a halt. So I would watch to see what it does out of the halt. I kind of think it's going to be a possible short, maybe a squeeze. If it opens higher, I think it'll squeeze and then probably roll over. So I would, if I was in, be looking to take profit or scalp to the short side. The risk on this one for me is definitely higher than the typical stock I would trade. So I would size accordingly. So you've got a high there. So the high is 31.22, and look at already back down to 29.50. So I don't even think you could have shorted that without having a hotkey already queued up. The high now is 32.24. Big spreads over almost $1 right now. 50-cent spreads. It's hard for me to even read the level 2 when the spreads are this big. So even though I think, so now it looks like it's going to halt again. And the reason it'll halt again is because it dropped to 29 and then spiked up to 33.64, which is 10%, right? It's like 3 points. So even though to me this looked more like a short, it just goes to show why I'm staying clear of this price range, because they can be pretty irrational. And they can be irrationally strong longer than you can afford to keep holding it, is, the other side of it. Is this stock really, should it really be worth $35, $34 a share? I don't know. But it was worth $4 a share last week. So you can have that short bias and say this thing's probably going to come back down to, $5, $6, but can you hold it until it, turns around? Most of us couldn't. So my bias on this was to the short side because I felt like it had already ramped up so much right here, 2, 4, 5 green candles in a row. To me, it didn't make sense that anyone would want to buy it as high as $31 or $32, but perhaps they'll only, I don't know, you've got FOMO. Those are the emotions right now. So the fear of missing out will convince people to buy it at pretty high prices, and maybe that plus some people who did short it in here getting squeezed out. I don't know. I think, again, with a 3,000 share position, it doesn't take much to be down $10,000, $15,000. RKDA getting halted on T12 pending investigation from the exchange. It's possible, but it did have news this morning. So the market's reacting to that actual headline that came out. So I don't know if that risk is as high as a stock that was moving without any news at all. You can check the halts on NASDAQ. Someone mentioned it just as a question if there was the risk of it, and I said I don't really think the risk is as high, considering they actually had news this morning. So yeah, the halt code right now is LUDP, which is the volatility trading pause. So the halt time was at 10:38 and 49 seconds. And I have no problem saying that I have FOMO. I see the stock's up 188%. I don't have a single penny of profit on it today. I made 4,000 on it on Monday though, and I did it following my rules of my strategy based on my price range. Statistically, you look at my profits from the last 2 years, it's like $600,000 in profits. I don't make very much money on stocks over $20 a share. Those are stocks that I often give back profits on. I know that about myself. I'm just not as good at these stocks, and I'd like to get better, but in the meantime, I'm not willing to risk giving up good gains by trading a strategy or a setup that I'm not good at. So, you have to have that knowledge of where you're at. So the high is 34.65. You can see the big spreads. Remember, if this gets halted going down, it would most likely open lower, which could give us an opportunity to buy a dip. But again, buying a dip on a $33 stock is not my go-to price, my go-to strategy. The other problem with these dips, like the one we had here, is that it now sets the volatility band from the low up to the high. So now from 32 up to, so 32 plus 10% would be 3.2 points. So that's 35. I mean, we're really kind of right at a potential circuit breaker halt again. I mean, it's very close to another halt. Right, so there you can see the way that's trading at 37.40. This will get halted again unless someone sells low enough to bring it back within the volatility bands. It's not halted yet, but now it is. All right, so it's crazy. Interestingly, though, the volume is decreasing, and that to me is a warning sign. Decreasing volume as we continue to squeeze up. You just don't give in to the FOMO is all I'm going to say, because even if you got away with it on this stock, there will be a point where I almost am 100% sure this will turn around and it will drop. It'll drop 10%, it'll get halted going down, and it'll open 3 or 4 points lower. And that's where you could wipe out months of hard work. Months. Yeah, this spike here had decent volume on the 1 minute. I mean, the 1 minute volume is increasing a bit. The 5 minute is decreasing, but I guess that's because of the circuit breaker halts. And yeah, sure, you could say, oh, well, I'm just going to buy 100 shares because, who cares? It's only 100 shares. I just want to, be part of the action. And that's fine. That's probably not a bad way to test the water, but you still want to buy at a logical point a good setup, because otherwise, what are you just going to randomly buy these anytime they start popping up? I mean, it's one approach, but for each one of these that do go parabolic, think about all the others that do the false breakout. They pop up and then they reverse hard. Well before they get up here. They reverse like at this point here. They retest high a day and then fade. So the halt time on this was 10:45, so resumption should be 10:50 and 4 seconds. Now, something for us to be mindful of is that when we have a stock going parabolic like this, FOMO does pick up for traders. And so some traders will have the discipline to not jump into the stock that's going crazy because they're like, it's up too much, it's too extended. But the next stock that starts to move, they're going to jump on. And So when you see another stock start to move, that's when you can kind of be looking for. It's almost like, the sharks are now in a feeding frenzy. There's this, huge opportunity at RKDA. You see a drop of blood in the water somewhere else, and boom, they're on it. So that's something that we often see, is this sort of, we call it sympathy momentum, because we see momentum on one stock and now we see it on like 4, 5, 6 others that are really only strong because this one has gotten everyone so excited. You can do really well trading sympathy momentum. So far today, we don't have any. We have RKDA up 220%, and that's really it. DXTR, my 500 bucks there, I thought this might get a little sympathy momentum, but it is doing this rejection. So it's dropped back down, at least for now, and it doesn't look that great. YTEN is on the scanners, but this one doesn't seem to be doing a lot yet. So right now it's kind of a, I don't know, we just have this one, nothing else. And maybe that's because of the price range. We're not going to get sympathy when you have the stock that's going crazy is $37. Maybe if it was at the $5, $6 price, other stocks in that range would get going. Okay, so there's the resumption. Remember, if it drops 10%, so the open was at 37.44, so if it drops basically 4 points to $33, it could get halted going down. So I would watch this, for a potential short. Got my order. I'm trying to short it, but I don't think I'm going to get filled. No, I've filled 226 shares. So I'm doing this really just not because I'm trying to make money, but just to prove the example of what I expect it's going to do. What I expect it'll do is I expect it'll open lower. And then I'll cover it on the drop. So it's, again, this is not my go-to strategy by any means. Number one, to short stocks. Number two, to trade stocks at this price range. That's why I only have 250 shares. I'm going on small size. But I've seen these happen enough times where the first halt going down, it ends up resuming quite a bit. Once it resumes from the halt, it resumes lower. So I would kind of think around the 9 moving average, which is 31.27. But I would definitely have a hard stop at the highs, and it could stop me out, but statistically there's a very high likelihood this will open lower. So one of the problems for me is I don't have any hotkeys. I don't use hotkeys for short selling. All of my hotkeys are for buying to the long side. So what I'm going to do on this is manually prepare a couple of orders. I'll prepare one for 100. See, I got filled only 226 shares. So I'll prep one order. Let's see. For 113 shares, and another order for 113 shares. So I'll have, and then I'll actually prepare another one for the full 226, which would be my stop, the one I'll use for stopping out. I see OPHC popping up, and I kind of, I don't know if it's going to be the sympathy Momo stock. It's on the scanner for sure. The high is right now 50, but the volume is light and the spreads are big. It is a stock with a history of making bigger moves, as you can see, but I'm not sure if it's going to do it here. I think I'm just going to focus on RKDA for now. So the halt time was at 10:50.41. So again, I've got, I'll put an order at $35 for my max loss. Or maybe I'll just put it at 36 just in case it squeezes. So I'll have one full order to close out max loss, so I buy there. And then I'll put an order maybe at 29.90 to cover half. Let's see if it drops down. I'll put another one at 31.90. I don't know, just throwing out some orders and we'll see what happens. This should resume in about a minute. So again, the reason I'm doing this is because I don't have hotkeys to get out using Control Z to bail out or anything like that, because I don't trade to the short side enough to want those keys. So I just have to manually type out the orders, which is a little bit of a pain, and that's why I have them set up in 3 places here. So max kind of profit target of $30, take profit on some at 31.90, and bail out on the whole thing at 36 if it goes the wrong way. Like I said, statistically these open lower. The fact that I'm taking it short probably means there's a really good chance it'll open higher and squeeze through the highs. But I'm not going to switch long. I'm not going to go FOMO. If this doesn't work to the short side, I'll just get out, and this is not a big deal. All right, so we've got about 15 seconds to resumption here. So halted at 33.70. I'd like to see a resumption on the lower side, and I'll probably look to cover half into that resumption. Maybe I'll move my order up just a little bit. So it looks like this might be a 10-minute circuit breaker halt, which is definitely going to slow down the Momo. So this is the other interesting thing, is that we've seen 5-minute circuit breaker halts, and then we've seen 10-minute circuit breaker halts. And they're not in between. It's either 5-minute or 10-minute. And actually, I got to cancel my order here. I don't want to fill the rest of that, even though it's only 14 or 15 shares. So it's kind of interesting when we have a 5-minute versus a 10-minute. I'm not really sure who's the decision maker on which one it's going to be, but it seems that the 10-minute halts were something that kind of started in November, December to slow down the momentum, and we would see them on stocks going up and sometimes on stocks going down. And so I know if I was long on this stock right now, I'd be nervous if I was long. I'd be nervous because of the risk of a T12, given the fact that it's up 188%. I would be nervous because if I bought it anywhere above $30, my downside risk, I think, is a lot higher than my upside potential. But, you know, I'd be starting to wonder if I gave it to FOMO by buying it that high. So the 10-minute halt kind of increases the amount of time you can worry about the trade, unfortunately. So OPHC, you know, was a possible sympathy play, but didn't really hold up. Y10, YTEN, a little bit of sympathy on this one as well, from 210 up to 250. It does have resistance at 283, the 200 moving average. So I think, again, even at this point, it's a little high for an entry. So, yeah, I'm already short RKDA. I was short at 33.70 going into the drop, which isn't the best entry, obviously. I mean, that's basically, it was the low of that candle. So my stop is kind of far away. I only have 226 shares. However, the reason I shorted is because statistically, when stocks go up this much, the first circuit breaker halt going down, they almost always resume lower. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this resumes at $31, for instance. And that's only $2 lower, but you know that's not bad. So that's kind of what the play is here, the expectation that it will resume lower. Some people would do a dip buy if it opened a lot lower, like at 28 or 30, and then try to scalp that first pop, which is where short sellers, in this case like myself, would cover. So that's also a play, but I'm not going to do a dip buy on this just because I just don't feel comfortable on it. We're about a minute away from resumption now. And if this ended up being halted for like 30, 40 minutes or an hour, you know, that just it doesn't resume, that would be okay for me also, because that would almost guarantee that it'll open lower, because by the time it does resume, people are like, I want out. So, all right, I've got my orders ready to cover. I've got one around 30. I'll put it, maybe I'll move it up a little bit. Whatever. And then another around 32. And we'll just kind of see where this thing opens. I'll probably, I mean, I might just end up covering at market, but I've got my orders for 113 shares. So let's see where this opens. So I want to see a little bit of a drop. I covered half. Covered another, no, come on. Covered another 75 shares. And I'd cover the rest. So the high of that candle is 32.16. I don't want to see it over 32.16. So 32.16 is my new stop. Covered the rest. So $426 profit. It's not a big winner, but with 250 shares, you know, green is good, and that puts me up $992 on the day. And I'll take it. Some traders, like I said, would do a dip buy here, but that's not really my strategy. So I'll just leave it alone, take the one reversal, and be happy that I'm green on both my trades today. All right, so that's it for me here. We're at 11 a.m. I don't usually trade this long into the morning, so another good green day, $992.